the man seemed sincerely puzzled. He looked at me and asked me a different question, this time aimed at my job. Why are you selling these books? This wasn't the first time I had been asked questions like that. Questions like, why do you believe in Ellen White? Or why does your church why do you go to church on Sabbath? Came at me just about every day. Canvassing was where I started to have my first experience with God. And it was also where I was challenged the most about that experience and challenged to share it with others. It's why I am a Christian today, but it originally didn't start off like that. There was a group canvassing at my church for about 5 weeks, and then they were going to move on to another church, and they asked me to canvass with them. And I was about 13, so I was like, this is a great way to make some money, and this will be a good experience, so I decided to go. And I went for a couple weeks, and it was a good experience, but it was just more for the money. It was, just when I'm done, and then that's it. So I signed up for a 10-week summer program the next summer. And you can't go for 10 weeks and just view canvassing as a job because it's really hot. Nobody wants to see you. They don't want you knocking on their door. You go for hours without selling anything. And sometimes you just want to stay in the van and rest in the cool air conditioning. And so something had to change. I couldn't stay the way I was. I had to change. And my leaders gave some really thought-provoking worships on the importance of devotions. And that was something that I hadn't had for myself before. I'd had them with my parents in the car on the way to school. We had them every Sabbath night, every Friday night. But they weren't something that I had on my own. It wasn't a personal experience. It was just something that we had. And so, as I started having these devotions, I began to learn about Jesus and who he was. And I began to see his character in a different way than I had ever seen it before. I started reading the book Desire of Ages. Actually, I read The Messiah, which is the Desire of Ages rewritten. And I began to see how practical Jesus was and how everything in his life that he did it for a reason. And I began to be changed, slowly but surely. Not all at first. It wasn't like one day I was interested in the world and the next day I was totally disinterested. But slowly, I began to be changed and transformed. And my experience with God has been just that. It's been an experience of me getting to know him as a friend. And as I kept growing, I went on to Fountain View, and I was able to grow a lot more there. And a lot of times, I would be discouraged while I was there, and then the staff would give this worship, or someone would say something, or they'd offer to pray with me, and it would be exactly what I needed for that day. And being in that environment, in that spiritual influence, was something that I really needed at that time in my life. And when anyone asks me why I'm a Christian, I have to tell them that it's because of what I've seen God do in my life. And there's two examples that stick out to me very clearly. And one of them happened when I was very young. I was about probably 6, maybe 7 years old. And I was swimming at a pool in Florida. And my mom was watching me, but she was kind of talking to another lady. And I thought since I was a very big girl, I was going to leave my little floaty ring by the side of the pool and just go in by myself. So I did that, and I was kind of walking along the bottom, and then, of course, the bottom ended, and I began to sink, and I was convinced I was drowning. So I tried to yell help, but of course I was underwater, and then I broke up to the top and grabbed a breath of air, but I didn't have enough time to say anything. And so I just prayed really quickly. It's like, God, please help me. Please help me not to drown. And just at that time, my mom saw me, and she turned around, and she helped me get out of the pool. And that was one of the first evidences I saw of God working directly in my life, right after I prayed, right after I asked him. And that to me was powerful because it was just knowing that there was someone there, even though I couldn't see him. And then last year, I was a senior, and I was at work one day, and I had to go get some sewing machines for a project I was doing. I was driving a really big, boxy van, and I grabbed the sewing machines, and one of them was on the floor of the car, and it started sliding towards my feet. And so naturally, I kind of leaned over, tried to push it out of the way, and as I did that, I jerked the wheel over and toppled over an embankment about 100 feet down. And I rolled the car 3 times, had to be rushed to a nearby hospital, and from there to a bigger hospital, because it was a really small hospital, and throughout the whole experience, I saw God's working. There were a couple ways that I saw him working, even just in the initial part of the accident, because there was a government forestry's truck coming down the road at that exact time and saw the whole accident happen, and the ambulance was able to get there a lot sooner than it would have otherwise. And also there was a staff member and 2 students who were also watching the accident, and then another staff member's daughter from the house that I had just come from. And so there were people being able to see it all over campus, and because of that, there were people there within 2 minutes of it actually happening. There was someone there to help me get over my shock and kind of control the bleeding and stuff like that. And it was a miracle also that I didn't suffer any brain damage or internal bleeding. And, at first I kind of saw it as a big mistake, but I realized how much it showed me that God was working personally in my life and how much he has a plan for me. And I can say that through my experience, God has shown me that he's there for me. And in 2 Corinthians 5 or 7, it says, "We are to live not by faith, but by sight." But for me, God has given me so many evidences that if I didn't trust in him, I wouldn't be living by faith or sight, because I've seen his working